$70 unfinished game with performance issues on release and double the price for season pass? Or this 5-year-old $9 game that's finished and fun? Yeah, the choice seems pretty clear, fellas. So lately I've been getting into indie horror games. It all started when I finally played Resident Evil. Yeah, I know, late to the party, but man, it genuinely blew my mind. I felt so nostalgic and melancholy about the whole situation. Like genuinely, I felt like, wow, this is what I've been missing out on my whole life? Are you kidding me? Why did it take so long for me to play this? I still have to complete the Resident Evil series, but I'm sure most of you are aware of the switch from survival horror to action horror. And I'm not going to go too into it, but man, I really love the first 3 games. And this is coming from someone who started off into the 5th game, and then played the 4th, and then finally moved on to the trilogy. The first 3 Resident Evil games to me are so perfect. And I think the time period that they were made in, mixed in with the style, graphics, genre, just made me enjoy it way more than 4 and 5. It's funny though, because I got just as scared in 4 as well, so it's not even about the horror. I know people say Resident Evil 4 is more action horror, and although that's true, I was scared shitless still. Regardless, despite being more scared of Resident Evil 4 at times, the first 3 games just feel so much, as odd as it is to say, more real? I guess it really is the survival horror genre. You do feel a lot more weaker obviously than 4 and obviously 5. It does feel like you're fighting for your survival throughout the whole game. And it's interesting because despite how much I feared the Resident Evil 4 village, something about the mansion, the police station, the streets, they just felt so much more real. My first playthrough of those games were such a crazy, unique experience that I'll never forget. And again, this is not even a jab at Resident Evil 4 and 5. I really love those games. 4 especially. It's what made me play the first 3 games to begin with. But something about the first 3 Resident Evil games just made me wish the series kind of kept as is. So a couple months after I've beaten the first 3 Resident Evil games, I'll look into some indie horror games to try to find a game that maybe matches how I felt about the first 3 games. And I find a couple, but it's a little bit hard, right? I am coming off of Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3. They are indie games after all, and Resident Evil 1 through 3 are like some of the best games. It was going to be pretty hard to find a game that, gave me the same sort of feeling. And I hate to admit this and lose any cool points that I don't even have yet, but I was on TikTok and saw a cool fan edit of this game. It looked a bit like Resident Evil, with the camera angles, graphical style. The game was called Alisa. And fellas, did I pick a game to play right after Resident Evil? Obviously, Alisa is very inspired by 90s survival horror, and it shows in the best way possible. The game looks so perfect, with a nice style that fits its dollhouse aesthetic. The game for the most part also takes place in a mansion. It's so fun just unlocking and making your way through the mansion. Just finding new things only to get stuck on a couple of more new things. The dialogue and the voice acting in the game is so fun too. There's this really wacky part when you meet this puppet, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing at the time. It felt so jarring while also fitting. There's also this part where you fight the first boss, and he says some wacky fitting dialogue and bursts out in some crazy laughter. I thought it was so perfect and funny.
Come to have some fun!
And the real fun part of Alisa was the variety of enemies. The game hits you fast with some of these enemies. You got the little tricycle fella, big fella, absolute monsters of enemies as your first playthrough. It's really fun too because the variety doesn't feel like it slows down. And they feel so fitting, just complementing the game's aesthetic. The puzzles throughout Alisa are pretty fun too. I never got stuck on one, but they felt hard enough that I felt satisfied after I figured it out. One of my absolute favorite parts about the first 3 Resident Evil games are the soundtrack. It felt so eerie and haunting, but always so memorable. And personally, I love the Alisa soundtrack. It sounds just as memorable, and there's so many good highlights to pick from the soundtrack. Just booting up the game itself, and hearing that main menu theme, it's such a perfect way to start off the session. Every time I booted up the game to play again, I'd always listen to the main menu theme just for a bit. Perfect way to start off a session. Which reminds me of the horrors when I barely first started playing the game and entering the hallway. Seeing those dolls move along with the soundtrack playing. Just hearing the hallway theme takes me back. A nice fun track too is when you get the puppet and you can finally shop. It's such a perfect fitting theme for this little guy. And while it's not spooky, it's so fitting. It adds onto the character, while still also fitting with the game's aesthetic. Genuinely, just listening to the soundtrack makes me want to tell everyone about this game. Even if you don't like survival horror, the game feels like such an escape to a whole different place. Like you've just been transported into this entirely different world. Much like Alice in Wonderland, huh? And just like every other Resident Evil game, Alisa's Safe Room soundtrack is such a bliss to hear. Fun part of Alisa 2 is the bosses at the end of every stage. They felt like they really fit the level and really helped make you feel like you just beat the chapter. The boss fights were always fun too. I'll be honest, I probably struggled with every one of them, but it just felt perfect as a way to end off the level. They also feel fitting to the level. Finally, beating one really makes you feel like you're moving on to the next stage. And not to mention, some of these bosses are pretty hard. Personally, I struggled with probably all of them, but I really enjoyed how different some of the fights can be too. So after beating Alisa, I didn't play too much other games for a while. I still wanted to get into indie horror games, but I wasn't really sure what to play. I mean, there's so much, right? So I wasn't really sure what was worth getting into. Obviously, I did try a little bit of stuff, but nothing was really grabbing me like Alisa did. Which, fair enough, Alisa is just such a perfect game I would have never expected to find. But I still wanted to get into indie horror games, so I just looked up something I heard about, Puppet Combo. You always see people talking about Puppet Combo games in the YouTube comments, so I checked out a few of the games. It's funny, I actually never watched anyone play a Puppet Combo game before, which I'm glad since I'm not spoiled on anything. So I checked out a few of the games and I liked what I saw. You know, the graphical style, slashers-esque genre. I'm a big fan of campy horror movies, so I thought it was perfect. I found a bundle called the Torture Star Bundle. It included a lot of games and I thought it'd be a good way to get into it. Although I did learn a bit later that Puppet Combo actually didn't really develop a lot of these games, they mostly just published it. I guess people just kind of put it as an umbrella term for Puppet Combo games since they do publish it. But with all those games in the bundle, I decided to try Rewind or Die. Rewind or Die is a pretty funny and charming horror game. It takes place in the 90s, set in the UK. And I'll say, I really enjoyed the UK setting. Felt like I was playing in a whole different language. Well, not really, but you know, it's kind of an enjoyable change of pace. You start off talking with your mate, it's British, and you end up heading to work at the video store. Remember, this is the 90s, and it's pretty neat so far in. You talk to some interesting customers, see some funny movie titles, and surprisingly, it doesn't take place fully in the video store, which I think is better off because the game's locations are pretty nice. There's this chase scene that transitions you to the next level, and I thought it was pretty nice, got intense at times. And the best part of this game is the British voice acting. I couldn't help but repeat every line I heard.
Better get a jog on, mate. You know what it's like.
Better get a jog on, mate. One of the funny parts of my playthrough is I actually messed up one of the parts. The guy tells you to turn off the fire, but I kind of forgot and, well, I killed him. It's such a dumb funny thing that I like. It doesn't matter much, but it also does. I felt like such an idiot for killing him. And it's a neat little thing like that adds to like a more personalized playthrough. The ending of Rewind or Die is pretty nice too. Nothing special, but it does its job and I liked it to finish off the story. Although I did try my best for the absolute best ending, which is absolutely beyond batshit. Like you do this to save a dog. You fight this big ass pig thing demon to save a dog. And that's the best ending you could get. Yeah, just a super fun wacky ending. It's a pretty short game. You can't go wrong with Rewind or Die. It's a nice, short, and sweet, enjoyable experience. So after playing a couple of Puppet Combo games, I kind of wanted a break from it, try something else. That's the great thing about indie horror games too. Tons of different genres to enjoy. But truthfully, my favorite part of indie horror games is the graphical style. It feels so fun to play a game that's so drastically different from the standard we see. Especially when it's a new fresh game imitating your childhood consoles. It feels like reliving your childhood in the best way possible. So I searched up any Nintendo 64 horror games since I saw there was so much PSX ones. Surprisingly, not too much Nintendo 64 based horror games. But I did find one, Shipwrecked 64. And that Steam trailer felt pretty odd, kind of uncanny. I didn't understand how this could be a horror game, but I was kind of hooked. Now let me preface this though. I did not finish Shipwreck 64. I feel like a bit of a fraud for even talking about it. But man, I'm sorry, this game stuck with me so hard and I absolutely love it. And maybe it's because a certain thing in my life happened around the time I was playing Shipwrecked. But this feels so nostalgic, like I'm really playing a Nintendo 64 horror game. I mean, obviously. But it really encapsulates how I felt about playing some Nintendo 64 games as a kid being scared. It specifically reminds me of the time when I was younger. Playing Diddy Kong Racing and Mario 64. Just hanging out in the hub, walking around. I wasn't really good at games. I kinda just wanted to play, be in the world, without really playing. I just enjoyed driving around Diddy Kong's hub world, looking at stuff beyond reach. But maybe sometimes my mind would wander in the hub thinking, that's a bit odd, that hasn't happened before. It's like everything just unwrapped when I first started playing Shipwreck 64. I just saw some things that just felt so familiar, that felt ominous. There are some parts of the game that just felt kind of odd and dark, despite being also kind of normal. And going even beyond the game's normal playthrough feels even more crazy. I've played a bit more than just the normal playthrough, and although I wasn't able to experience it without a guide, just the things I've seen and experienced from the game are just so perfect. I'll be honest, I can't even begin to try or understand the puzzles in the game. But man, going further beyond, The soundtrack, the imagery, the ambience, the plot, it all just feels so sick and sinister without feeling too tryhard. It feels authentic. And it's funny because I remember first seeing the game and just thinking it's a dumb little mascot platformer horror game. And cut to now, just remember what I played. It feels so crazy. So for now, that's all I'll say about it. Obviously, I didn't complete it, so there's tons to be said, but I'm hoping maybe I'll make a video about it sometime. Okay, so those were some of the indie horror games that I've played that really stuck with me. Obviously, there's a lot more, but I just thought I'd talk about these games because they felt distinct enough, and I just wanted to talk about them for a bit. I've talked about more indie horror games on the channel if you'd like to check it out. Maybe even a one about a sick cat. I think this one has a lot of potential, and I can't wait for it to come out.